In the fall of 1875, a late visitor comes to the door of the Nesbit family in Rossville, York County. The door is answered by the woman of the house, Mrs. Nesbit, surprised at the unannounced woman who asks to stay the night. Mrs. Nesbit declines, but the woman persists, citing her tired old bones in need of rest. Again, Mrs. Nesbit declines, and moves to send her away, when the woman angrily exclaims, "How would you like to be denied your rest?" Mrs. Nesbit, unsure of the stranger's intentions, said she didn't know, and sent the woman away. That night, Mrs. Nesbit tossed and turned in her bed, unable to sleep, and soon her insomnia would turn into horror, as she received a new visitor in the night, one of shadowy form and eyes like orbs of flames. Welcome to Keystone Curiosity, where we explore the life, land, and culture of my beloved home state. Pennsylvania has something to offer everyone. It is living proof that the world is a beautiful place. You just need to take the time to find it. Located throughout southeast Pennsylvania and permeating into the culture beyond, signs and stories of witchcraft are found within the lore of the people, even to this day.
Quick shout out and thanks to the Gashahoppen historians for allowing me to film at the Henry Andes house over the course of this episode.
The house and the property has shown up on a few of my videos now, as it has served as both a meeting place at the birth of the United Church of Christ here in America, and as an encampment and headquarters for George Washington between the Battle of Brandywine and the winter at Valley Forge. The historians do an amazing job with the preservation and maintenance of this historic property, and they open it to the public during the Gashahoppen Folk Festival, which they organized to show the lost skills of daily life for Pennsylvania Dutch in the 17 and 1800s. I also did a video on this last year, and we'll be leaving links to that and their website below so you can check them out at your leisure.
As Germanic immigrants came across the Atlantic, they would bring with them their customs and cultures. Among these would be the superstition and fear of witchcraft that had seen trials all across Europe from the 1580s through the 1630s.
These trials would set a precedent in how supernatural crimes would be handled, which would famously lead to the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts. But widely unknown, Pennsylvania would have their own witch trial 9 years before Salem made it cool. In February of 1683, the founder of Pennsylvania, William Penn, would preside in Philadelphia, where two women, Margaret Matson and Gertrude Henderson, stood accused of using witchcraft to curse the health of a neighbor's cattle. The trial revolved heavily on hearsay and rumors, with Matson's own daughter claiming to have been woken in the middle of the night by an apparition of her mother, standing at the foot of her bed, demanding the souls of the livestock. Penn would ultimately deliver a verdict of guilty of having the common fame of a witch, but not guilty in manner and form as she stands indicted.
This verdict would neither confirm nor deny the existence of witchcraft in Pennsylvania, but it would ensure that it would have no place in the judicial system of Penn's colony.
A commonly overlooked portion of Pennsylvania Dutch culture is just how important these fears and superstitions were to the notoriously devout community. Cows failing to produce milk or bad crop yields would have a detrimental effect on one's livelihood. As such, within this superstition of the paranormal, there developed two main categories based off of the intentions of the practitioner: raucherij and hekserij. While a good translation in English is difficult at best, raucherij is best understood as white magic, dealing in healing, herb lore, and protective charms, with rituals being performed by brauchers or powwowers to ward off evil and bless those under their care. Hexerij is best understood as black magic or witchcraft, dealing in curses and spells, with rituals performed on a basis of jealousy and sometimes revenge. Stories of the conflict between these supernatural forces are told throughout the history of the people living here, like that of Mrs. Nesbit, who we began today's episode with. A local man by the name of Dr. Gusler offered to assist the family. Gusler was a braucher, and convinced that Mrs. Nesbit had been hexed. He told her that on a certain day, at a certain hour, she was to heat a sickle red hot and pass it over her arm as close as possible without burning herself. The family was then instructed that anyone who should arrive at the door would be denied whatever they might ask, and were not to be given anything. Shortly after performing the braucher's ritual, a knock at the door reveals the same woman from before, bearing a burn on her arm. She asked Mrs. Nesbit for some ointment for the burn. Mrs. Nesbit refused. She asked for a strip of cloth to cover the wound, and again is refused. When she asks for a pin to hold whatever wrapping she might find, Mrs. Nesbit snaps that she would receive nothing from the household and sends the woman away. The woman leaves, and the nightly haunting ends.
What does any of this actually matter? It's just a bunch of superstitious nonsense. It's not like any of this is real, right? Well, while that may be true, the fear of the things beyond our control is something that persists even to this day. For our ancestors, oftentimes those fears and the triumphs over them would manifest themselves into legends and stories.
Stories like these highlight how people took back control and battled with these unseen and unnatural forces. Iron is considered to be harmful to spirits and witches in multiple different cultures. It's commonly used as a charm to protect buildings and livestock, and would often be seen as a horseshoe nailed to stable doors. Herbal concoctions would be used as both types of magic, in some cases to heal and protect, while others were poisons or curses. Specific rituals would occur on certain days throughout the year. Walpurgisnacht on April 30th had a special significance and became known as the Night of the Witches. This reputation descends from tales of the Old Country, where Hexen would meet high up in the German mountains. On this night, they would gather, dance, and celebrate their covenant with the devil. Meanwhile, in the farmlands below, villagers would take part in their own rituals. They would light signal fires and shoot pistols into the air, while singing hymns and clashing metal together, all in an attempt to keep the witches up on their mountain and away from their homes. Here in Pennsylvania, those superstitions would continue, with supernatural fear placed on hilltops like Hexenkopf just south of Easton in Northampton County, and Witches Hill on the aptly named Witchcraft Road in Berks.
So what does any of this matter? Well, if it helps, you can think about this folklore like the myths of ancient Greece. They don't exactly fit neatly into the historical record, but they do serve as a foundation to a culture. Understanding these legends is a way of peering into the minds of the people of those days. And just as back then, today, those legends are handed down through generations by storytellers.
And we got up to the top of the hill, and the horse reared up and ran back down the hill to Hamburg. Scared the bejeebers out of us. I'd never go to Witches Hill again. And don't you ever go to Witches Hill. That's where the spooks are.
Charles J. Adams is one such storyteller. Since the 1990s, Charlie has published over 24 books on ghost stories and local legends. Even in retirement, he continues to tell stories in person, bringing an image and an energy to guide one's imagination to the limits of what we know is possible. When I asked him about the need for telling stories of legends and folklore when there's so much to offer from movies and television, he gave an interesting response.
They're ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. They made a mockery out of what I believe is should be a very mental thing. It should be like, I want to hit your imagination. I want you to look over your shoulder right now. Right now. Look over your shoulder. And I bet you're wondering, should I or shouldn't I? But that's what I want people when I'm telling stories. I want to look over their shoulders and make them wonder, what is he looking at? But as long as I can see hundreds of eyeballs looking at me, ears listening to me, and I'm able to capture all of their imaginations, I'm there. Because that's what it's all about to me, is to get their imaginations fueled up. To go home saying, oh, that was creepy, wasn't it? I've done my job.
And after talking to him for a while, I can see where he's coming from. Where modern storytelling like this channel focuses on showing you images to help understand the past and the present, legends, myths, and folklore that cannot be verified in the same way that history can, is best told by leaving some gaps to allow for the audience's imagination.
Point in case, if I tell you a story about a witch, multiple images from Hollywood might come to mind. But it's the context of the story that pushes the mental picture towards one or the other.
As you become more invested into the story, your emotions begin to have an effect on your imagination, which pushes a mental image towards something more fearful or something more benevolent. And it's in that way that these superstitions are used to convey lessons, which when handed down over generations become traditions, and cement themselves as part of the culture.
These superstitions started as a way for our ancestors to explain the world around them and take some measure of control over that which they couldn't. And while today we pride ourselves in being able to separate fact from fiction, you still might find yourself startled when a black cat crosses your path in the middle of the night, for it might just predict your impending doom. That is going to wrap it up for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. As per the usual, if you have any suggestions of where you'd like to see me go next, feel free to leave them in the comments below. In the meantime, hit that like and subscribe so that you can receive notifications about anything else across the state of Pennsylvania. In the meantime, y'all have yourselves a good one.